Bills Mafia. On tonight's Air Raid Hour post-game show, we are diving deep into all things Bills Colts. We've got the latest injury updates, major takeaways, and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is a breakdown you are not going to want to miss. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour presented by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at The Bills Guys, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills Guys, and the Buffalo Bills have defeated the Indianapolis Colts 30-20, improving their record to 8-2, second place in the AFC East, the AFC, Dave, behind only the Kansas City Chiefs, who come into town next week.
Yeah, and it could have been a situation where we were playing the Kansas City Chiefs for the positioning, at least of the one seed, if it wasn't for that blocked
Not what the script
feel
had
really
the
bad
man.
for the Denver Broncos. I've talked about on this show how my best friend is a Broncos fan, and this has been a year where it's been ups and downs for them. I watched a good amount of that game while the Bills game was on, and man, it seemed like the Denver Broncos outplayed the Kansas City Chiefs in that game. So a bummer that the Chiefs win. However, another AFC team in the playoff mix loses, the Denver Broncos. So we'll see. A big game coming up, but the Bills taking care of business in Lucas Oil in the game where, again, maybe similar to what happened against the Miami Dolphins. The further along in this game, the less stressful maybe it got. So a little slow out of the gate, but eventually the Bills got there. And by the way, that 30-20 score, not really, I don't think, indicative of the separation there at the end of the game. The Colts getting that sort of garbage time touchdown. So
Alec Pierce sitting on two of my fantasy benches, so why not get a nice little garbage time touchdown for him? The Bills have 8 wins now. They're 8-2. The Jets and the Patriots sit at 3-7, a full 5 games back of the Buffalo Bills. The New York Jets were utterly embarrassed out here in the desert against the Arizona Cardinals. The Dolphins sit at 2-6, and they are playing the LA Rams right now on Monday Night Football. And we're essentially what, Dave, like 2-3 wins away from clinching the AFC East.
3 wins away. If the Bills win 3 more games, they can clinch the AFC East. And it's nice to have this cushion because we do come up again on this stretch of games. It's a very interesting stretch of games for the Bills, right? You have these 4 games that we feel like we've been talking about for a long time that always seemed like it was like well away on the horizon, and now they're here, right? We've got the Chiefs, Niners, Rams, Lions stretch, and then it's just 3 games after that, 2 games against the Pats and 1 against the Jets, and the regular season will be over before we know it. It is crazy to me how quickly this regular season is zooming by. Like they say, every year goes by faster and faster, but man, it feels like the regular season is going by so quickly, and just like that, in the blink of an eye, the Bills are 8-2.
And I'll tell you what, I bet the season is going by quickly for a lot of teams like Bills fans, Chiefs fans, Steelers fans, Ravens fans, but not so much for maybe some fans of some other teams, like the other teams in our division, the AFC East. It seems like the NFL is the story of the have and have-nots this year. Both the AFC and the NFC sort of have a clear-cut 7-8 teams already, and then there is just an absolutely massive drop-off. 16 teams this year, 500 or better. 16 teams under 500. 10 teams, 4 games or more under 500. The bottom of the barrel NFL teams this year, it's crazy how many of them there are vying for top 10 picks, the number 1 overall pick. It seems like those lower tier picks and the draft order is changing every week.
It does, and I see a lot of, I guess, cheeky, cheeky Giants fans complimenting Tyrone Tracy on his fumble in the game in Germany that ultimately led to the Giants losing that game because it put the
Tyrone
Giants in
Tracy
the
doesn't want Daniel Jones as his quarterback anymore.
no. So they're applauding him for the Giants to maybe be in the driver's seat to get that number one pick. For the Bills, right, in their division, the Pats end up
Mhm.
beating the Chicago Bears in an ugly game that kind of gave the Pats an extra win. Now maybe not takes them out completely, but with all these other teams with only 2 wins, the Pats getting that 3rd win maybe takes them out of the running for that number 1 pick. So, a lot of teams vying there down at the bottom of the barrel, and some teams that had some high hopes, by the way, this year. The Chicago Bears, down there with only 3 or 4 wins. You've got the Jaguars with only 2 wins, where a lot of people thought they were gonna be better this year. And then the Giants, of course, and the mess that Brian Dable and that team this year. What a disaster.
I mean, I think our guy Merck on Twitter said it best. Like, this is the reset year for the Buffalo Bills. This is a rebuild year for the New England Patriots. And the Bills are 5 games ahead of everyone in the AFC East. And the Patriots are tied with 2 teams who are apparently in the middle of a Super Bowl window, or they're all in window, in the Miami Dolphins and New York Jets, who can't muster any more than the 2-3 wins that they currently have right now. Some more news and notes around the league, a lot of it Bills related, some positive, some negative. Another story that's semi-Buffalo Bills related is breaking in the last couple hours or here or so. Tyrel Dodson is being waived by the Seattle Seahawks. Now, after the NFL trade deadline, it does not matter how many years you have of NFL service. You have to go through waivers. So Tyrel Dodson, and that pretty decent contract he signed with Seattle this offseason, have to go through the waiver wire process first. But
Mhm.
if he clears waivers, because I don't think the Buffalo Bills could entertain a contract like Tyrel Dodson has, if he clears waivers, the Buffalo Bills just so happen to have a backup middle linebacker job available with Bale Inspector going to IR this week. This could be maybe a serendipitous event here, and we might be able to see a Tyrel Dodson Buffalo Bills reunion in the next couple of days.
I mean, on paper, it certainly seems like timing wise, this is a perfect fit. And look, I mean, I get it when guys get released. It's like the first thing people do is like, oh, should the Bills sign this guy? In this case, yes, the Bills probably should try to go after Tyrell Dodson. Um, there was no real there's no real report or anything that the team and him separated unceremoniously. Like
Mhm.
he was a free agent, he just went and got what he got in Seattle. I don't think that there would be any ill will or anything like that. I think the Bills would welcome him back with open arms. I think he would probably be willing to come back given the injury you mentioned to Balon Spector and the fact that the Bills could use that depth now at that position. This is a position, as we saw in the playoffs a year ago, that the Bills would very much like to have shored up their depth and have a healthy group going into this latter stretch of the season. Certainly would be a welcome addition. I would be hopeful that the Bills could get this done, and it almost makes too much sense, and that's why I'm kind of fearful like maybe it won't happen because it just seems to make too much sense. So hopefully it does happen, and it's not one of those where it's like so obvious that it doesn't. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would be very
And
happy with it.
And he's also got to clear the waiver wire process first, but I don't know anyone who wants to pay the linebacker and a linebacker the contract he's gotten and take on those additional years he got from Seattle, because I believe he got a 2 or 3 year deal from the Seahawks. I don't have it in front of me. It's also kind of weird that Seattle let him go instead of just making him into a backup. Like the reports are, they wanted one of their younger guys to get some run, like someone like Tyrese Knight, who they drafted opposite of Ernest Jones, who they brought in via trade. They just wanted to get younger and go with a younger guy that they drafted, etc. But why not just make Tyrel Dodson a backup and a special teamer like he would be here if he signed here? It was kind of weird. So maybe there is something else going on and a reason for why they waived Tyrel Dodson. But I mean, Jordan Phillips just said yesterday, right? He's an acquired taste, and the Buffalo Bills like the way that he tastes. He said that last week. I almost got you to do a spit take with that on the pregame show. Maybe Tyrel Dodson is an acquired taste, and the Buffalo Bills like the way that Tyrel Dodson tastes. Some positive news for the Bills linebacking room, and maybe in addition that would make Tyrel Dodson unnecessary is Matt Milano is already getting his practice window opened. So there is 3 weeks, 21 days for him to practice with the Buffalo Bills before either having to go back on IR permanently or join the active roster. The Buffalo Bills would not be taking him and putting him into practice setting if they didn't think he was probably within 3 or 4 weeks from returning to the active roster. Sean McDermott already said he's not going to play this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe there's a chance he plays the week after the bye week, but within the next month, we should have Matt Milano back. And the combination of him, Terrell Bernard, and Taron Johnson is going to be really fun and exciting for Bills fans to get to see.
This is one where the timing tells me that there's no way he's not coming back, like probably after the bye, because here's the thing, like, number one, like, firstly, it was surprising and welcome news. Like, I didn't expect, by all accounts, Matt Milano to even be considered to come back until December. And here we are, November 11th. Now this potentially puts him on track to return in early December, but I was sort of expecting maybe them to open up that window in December, meaning he'd come back in late December, towards the end of the season. So the timing of this is interesting because you have the bye week there. So if the Bills didn't have to do this now. They could have waited until after the Kansas City game and after the bye week to do this if they didn't think that he was going to come back in short order. So with that bye week baked in here, I think the Bills are thinking like, hey, maybe we open up this window. We have a bye week anyway, and possibly Matt Milano only misses one game in the window that they open up this practice, this 3-week practice window. And so we'll see. I think it's very positive development if you're a Bills fan and you hear that news today, that there's a good chance that Milano comes back the week after the bye, and maybe worst case, he comes back the game after that, but the Bills will activate him. I'm guessing sometime in that week, if not leading up to that game after the bye, that obviously the week thereafter leading up to the following game, because otherwise he'd be over 21 days. So really good news and really excited to have him back.
That's some really good news. Now for some not so good news. Amari Cooper, Reggie Gilliam, Sean McDermott says they're just going to keep observing them and monitoring them over the course of this week. I would feel pretty safe in betting that we're probably going to see Amari Cooper this week as the Buffalo Bills maybe have a little bit more of motivation to get him on the football field against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. But also maybe they're just like, whatever, we're going to take it into the bye week. We're going to be precautious because we want him through the month of December and January. So to be seen with Amari Cooper. So keep an eye out for his practice availability this week, whether he's limited, full, etc. Keon Coleman will not be playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. It is unlikely we will see him until at least the earliest the week after the bye week, maybe later for him, but probably before the 4-week or the month mark, as if he would have been put on injured reserve. And then Dalton Kincaid. We could be without Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, and possibly Amari Cooper in this matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. Patella knee issue for Dalton Kincaid, came back into the game and then left. Brace and visible swelling in some post-game photographs on that knee injury. It does not seem to be, based on what all the Twitter doctors are saying and what banged up Bills are saying, to be too much of a long-term concern for Dalton Kincaid. But I would gather that he's probably not going to play against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. The Bills will give him at least the bye week to rest. So down Kincaid, down Coleman, maybe possibly down Amari Cooper against the Kansas City Chiefs this week.
Yeah, the Bills look like they're going to be pretty undermanned on offense against the Kansas City Chiefs, which is a bummer because that is a good Chiefs defense. And we know that it would be nice to have all hands on deck for that game. But in the end, as Greg pointed out in the post game yesterday, this is really a game that in the big picture maybe doesn't matter as much as we're making it out to be. The Bills have proven they can beat the Chiefs in the regular season. Obviously, these are different iterations of these two teams. It's going to be a struggle, I think, in this game for the Bills offensively. The Chiefs do have a good defense. We did just see the Denver Broncos maybe outplay them in a low-scoring affair, and that's maybe something that the Bills will look to try to do if they're down some of these weapons. The Denver Broncos don't exactly have all-world weapons outside of a guy like Cortland Sutton. They don't have a ton of weapons either, so it can be done. The main thing is you have this bye on the horizon. You need Dalton Kincaid healthy, especially for down the stretch. But of course, for the playoffs, you're going to hopefully have him back, obviously, well before that. And same thing for Coleman and Cooper. So it's one of those sort of balancing acts that you're having to play if you're Sean McDermott and weighing what is the importance of this game to potentially bring you within one game of the one seed if you win. But at the end of the day, health going into the postseason is really what's going to matter. And knowing on the horizon that likely you are going to only need one or two more wins to wrap up this division and get a home playoff game. That's really what your, I think, priority number one is right now if you're the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy, to be honest. Like, if you're the Buffalo Bills, all the different things that you have to juggle this week, part of your mindset could be, do we want that one seed? And if you want that one seed, then you're probably going to want to play a guy like Amari Cooper. And you're probably going to want to take some of your injured guys and risk them a little bit, knowing you have the bye week the week after for them to continue to rest up. But right now, it really appears that the Kansas City Chiefs have once again sold their soul to Satan, right? They don't seem to be losing any football games. So you also might just, if you're the Buffalo Bills, take an approach like, we're going to continue to rest guys if we feel like they need to be rested. We're going to err on the side of caution. This game might be more important because, as you and Greg said last night, the Buffalo Bills have already shown they can beat the Chiefs in the regular season. This game could be more about, hey, Kansas City, show us your hand so we can be better prepared for you in January when we're fully healthy. Like, that could be the Buffalo Bills mindset. Obviously, they're going to go in and they're going to attack and they're going to try to win that game. But I think maybe in the coaching staff's mind, in the front office's mind, that thought could also creep in as well. Like, hey, we go out, we're going to give it our best. We win. But if not, we're really looking for some tells. We're really looking to see if Kansas City tips their hand a little bit on some of the things that they want to do to attack us so we can better attack that in January.
Exactly. And I think the Bills have to realize at this point that even if they do win this game, it's still going to be hard to potentially get the one seed because of how easy the Chiefs' schedule looks down the stretch. And I mean, who knows, right? Even if the Bills win this game, they still have tough games ahead against the Niners, Lions, Rams. Like, there's no guarantee that winning you this game even gets you the one seed. Now, I understand the mindset of going for it, right? Because the Chiefs could slip up and you could end up falling into it. But I also think with the way that the Chiefs offense is banged up, and I know they got DeAndre Hopkins, and it looks like they're not going to have Isaiah Pacheco back for this week. Hopkins and Kelsey, those are their primary weapons. Like, this is a team that, if you're the Chiefs, haven't necessarily been an all-world offense this year with Patrick Mahomes and that crew. Like, so it could be a slugfest in this game, and it could be a game where, like, the Bills could still find a way to eke it out, even down some of their weapons. So I think especially with guys like Cooper and Kincaid, like, you probably go lean more towards being cautious with those guys because we've seen the Bills go into the playoffs undermanned, mostly on the defensive side in years past. But, like, that's the one thing. You have to be going into the playoffs healthy this year of the Bills to give yourself the best chance.
Before we get into our one big thing, our biggest takeaway from this week's game, a word from our sponsor.
What's up, y'all? Khalil Shakir here. When I want Buffalo pizza, it's got to be Picasso's.
Khalil Shakir. Your team, our pizza. Picasso's. This is Buffalo Pizza.
That's right. This episode is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza with 4 convenient locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's Pizza has been serving Buffalo's best pizza since 1980. Whether you are a local or across the country, you can enjoy their delicious pizza delivered fresh to your door. Visit picassospizza.net to place your order today. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, Dave, into our one big thing now. And every week, we have a million different things rattling around in our brain that we want to talk about, we want to get to. But our goal here at the top of the show, well, usually the top of the show, we're now 20 minutes into this episode, but our goal is to find that one big thing that we want to take away from this football game. I'm going to start with you. What is your one big takeaway?
You just said the word right there, takeaway. My one big thing in this game is the Bills defense and the takeaways that they had. 4 takeaways plus the turnover on down. So really 4 takeaways. And I know we're going to get to this when we get to the data tracking and all that, but really forced the Colts into several mistakes, survived their own mistakes a lot better than the Colts did. The Bills right now in this defense, really, it's not just a story about the defense, and the defense has been amazing at taking the ball away. They have 19 total takeaways on the season, which right now is second best in the NFL, behind only the Minnesota Vikings with 20, but the number one turnover differential in the NFL at plus 13. Next closest team, the LA Chargers, at plus 9. So for me, my one big thing is ball security on as a whole, and the ability for this team to really gain what I'll call operating leverage in games throughout this season so far. Plus 13 on the turnover differential. Whether or not you count turnover downs or not, and this doesn't really matter. They were plus 2 because the Bills also had their own turnover rundowns in this one. So plus 2 in turnover differential in this game, and put some plus 13 on the season. So my one big thing is this defense's ability to take the ball away. And although there were the 2 interceptions in this game, the offense's ability, and namely Josh Allen's ball security this year compared to years past, giving the Bills really good, I'll call again, operating leverage so far this season through 10 games, leading the NFL in turnover differential.
My one big thing from this football game is I am just thankful that the Buffalo Bills, as we talked about on the pregame show, just found a way to get the win and advance to 8-2, because I think they've really set themselves up to take advantage of the back half of their schedule. And that's really my one big thing, is that the next 4 games is going to make or break the Buffalo Bills season. And I do not even mean this from a seeding standpoint, and I don't even mean it from a wins or loss perspective. These next 4 opponents that the Buffalo Bills are going to face are a test of what we are going to see in January and what we need to overcome in order to accomplish that ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. Over the next 4 games, the next 5 weeks, because that bye week is after Kansas City, we face the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a Steve Spagnuolo defense. They have Andy Reid in that misdirection offense, and Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins. I know they're still missing Pacheco, but it's still the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. You have the San Francisco 49ers, who are likely going to have Christian McCaffrey back. They have Nick Bosa and that pass rush up front. They should be getting back into their form as the season progresses, and by the time they face the Buffalo Bills. We have to go out to Los Angeles and take on the Rams, who have Kyren Williams in a pretty good running game. They have Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, if they can stay healthy between now and then, right? So in the passing game. And then I've been watching a lot of Rams games this year. That young front 7 they have, just an absolute buzzsaw. They have some really good young pass rushers who get after it. So that's going to be a good challenge for the Buffalo Bills offensive line. And then obviously the big one outside of Kansas City is Detroit. You got David Montgomery, you got Jahmyr Gibbs, and a Buffalo Bills team that a lot of fans are like, oh no, we give up too many explosive runs. Well, Montgomery and Gibbs are going to be a tandem that you're going to have to curtail in order to possibly achieve what you want to achieve this season. Plus they have the passing game when Jared Goff isn't throwing 5 interceptions to complement it. And they still have a great defense even without Aiden Hutchinson. Our playoff lives do not depend on these games because it's actually heavily swayed towards the NFC. And I'm not even saying we need to win these games, but lessons need to be learned over the next 5 weeks, and we need to get and stay healthy over the next 5 weeks. Even if we come out of this 5-week window with just 1 or 2 wins in that span, if you come out better equipped for January, that's completely okay. I want to leave this stretch saying, yeah, I feel more confident the Buffalo Bills can beat a cover 1 defense, which is something they have struggled with this year, with just the 1 high safety. I feel more confident that this team won't give up so many back-breaking explosive runs over the course of a football game. If we just look competent and up to the challenge over the next 5 weeks against these football teams, then we can do our business in the final 3 AFC East games, and the real work starts in January. So I think this is a big test for our football team, not from a wins-loss perspective, but just look competent and look like this is a team that is built for January over the next month and week.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that, because if you start to kind of break down the Bills' win-loss record in this 8-2 team so far. Really, the Arizona Cardinals week 1, if you go back to that game, maybe looks like one of the Bills' better wins so far this season. Obviously, they've beaten Miami twice, who is down and hasn't been the team that a lot of people expected. They've beaten the Colts and Titans, 2 teams from the AFC South that are sub 500. I know the Colts were kind of in the playoff mix, but now 4-6. So this stretch is a good test for this Bills team to kind of see how ready are they truly, because the last time they kind of had I'll call test like this was it week 5 or week 6 when they went to Houston and really did not look good in that game. Josh Allen's worst game of the season. So yes, you'd like to carry some momentum, even if it's in a game where maybe you don't come out with the win, looking competent, looking efficient, and hanging with these teams. And, maybe even splitting these games 2-2 is not the worst thing in the world. I think if you were going to ask me right now, if the Bills could go 2-2 in this stretch of 4 games, I'm pretty sure I would take that.
Yeah. Get us to 10 wins with 3 games in the AFC East, and we only got to win one of those 3 games to lock down our playoff spot. Yeah, I would take that in a heartbeat. On to our data tracking this week, complimentary football. Every week we track 3 complimentary football statistics: time of possession, average starting field position, and turnovers. This week, the Buffalo Bills were able to win the time of possession battle 32 minutes to 28 minutes against the Colts. Average starting field position, the Colts got the better of the Bills. The Bills starting average field position was the 28-yard line, the Colts the 31.5. But the Buffalo Bills were +2 in turnovers this week. The Colts had 5 turnovers, one of those turnovers being turnover on downs with the Quentin Jefferson sack. And the Buffalo Bills had 3 turnovers, one of those turnovers being a turnover on downs on that incompletion to Curtis Samuel on a 4th down. So the Buffalo Bills are now 8-1 when winning the complimentary football differential, 0-1 when losing. And as you pointed out, the biggest statistic here, the Buffalo Bills defense stepped up when the offense was struggling. They complemented a struggling offense with those 5 takeaways.
Yeah, and I mean, on back-to-back possessions too, right, early in the game, and that ultimately gave the Bills a little bit of a cushion. And then inconceivably, you wonder how the heck they were down 13-10 at that one point. But yes, the Bills had their own turnovers, able to again survive their mistakes much better than the Colts did, and fewer mistakes ultimately. But the defense with the takeaways, and look, some of those fumbles, it's weird the way the ball bounces. The Bills have a fumble on a kick return that they recover. The Colts have a fumble on a play on offense that they recover. So those kind of offset with each other, I feel like, as far as the luck and the way the ball bounced. But ultimately, the Bills did a better job at taking the ball away. And I thought the defense really settled in, especially in the second half. And we're going to get to that. And you saw a few more coverage sacks in that second half. You had Rousseau using his length to get a sack, and then and a couple others. So creatively, the Bills getting sacks with Taron Johnson. And look, the turnover that Groot forced on that sack was all length, right? That's something that you just don't teach, and that's why you scout a guy like that and you hold a guy like that in high regard in the pre-draft process, because he used every bit of that 6'7" or whatever he is frame and wingspan to get that ball out. But the Bills continue, like I said, in my one big thing, to take the ball away and have a positive turnover differential. And man, the 5 takeaways, including that big sack by Quentin Jefferson on the turnover on downs, really shifted the tide in the favor of the Bills for this one.
Next up is our toxic differential tracker. We track explosive plays. Every week we track 10+ yard runs, 16+ yard passes, amended from 20. True Media tracks 16+ yard passes as explosives. And we track turnovers forced, explosive defensive plays. 10+ yard runs, the Buffalo Bills had 4 to the Colts 1. That one for the Colts was a big one, that Jonathan Taylor 55-yard run. 16+ yard passes, the Bills had 6 of those. The Colts only had 5, so we were +1 there. And then turnovers. The Colts forced 3 turnovers, one of them on downs. The Buffalo Bills forced 5 turnovers, one of them on downs. So when you add it all up, the Buffalo Bills were +6 in toxic differential this week. They are now 8-1 on the season when winning, toxic differential, 0-1 when losing.
Yeah, and I think that you don't realize the Bills had like it's weird to think, oh, did they really have 4 explosive runs? And yeah, they did, because James Cook was getting going. Josh Allen had one of his own, and the Bills really did a good job. And you're like, well, Jonathan Taylor, you look at Jonathan Taylor's box score and you're like 100 and plus yards. And it's like really 58 yards on one play. And then in the second half held him to, what was it, 5 carries for 7 yards in the second half.
None in the fourth quarter. That was all in the third quarter too.
All in the third quarter. The Bills completely got the Colts where they wanted and taking them out of the game script where they could continue to feed Taylor. I also thought, and I mentioned this in the post game, that the approach of the Colts running game at times, I questioned it a bit, trying to get Jonathan Taylor out on the edges. And I know that kind of maybe have worked well for other teams against the Bills, but I thought the Bills did a really good job in stringing out Jonathan Taylor when he was getting pitches and sweeps. I would have tested more so the middle of that Bills defense, continue to test the middle of that defense if I was the Colts, but they didn't do that. They went away from that. And so at the end of the day, the Bills really held that Colts running game in check. And for Jonathan Taylor to only have really the one explosive out of a 100+ yard game in the way that we're measuring it really is a testament to the way that the Bills defense adjusted, especially in the second half there. So kudos to them. And also, I don't know when you mentioned the Colts had 5 of the toxic pass plays. I wonder how many of those came maybe on the last drive as
Only
well.
one of them. Only one of them.
Okay, fair enough. And I know
I think 2 of them came on the second to last drive. So a bunch of them were later on in the game, not early in the game.
Yeah, I know they had the one early one to Downs on that drive that they ultimately, I think that was the drive that Austin Johnson got the interception. Yep. But yeah, the Bills did a good job again in tightening up when they needed to.
Mm-hmm. Looking now at the stock up, some of our positive takeaways from this football game. I was going to start with the offense, but let's start with the defense, since the defense is the ones that won us this football game. We'll get to the offense and we'll give them their flowers in a little bit, what flowers we have to give. But the defense, right? 3 picks, forced and recovered fumble, 1 sack to cause a downs, 5 turnovers. It's all they needed. One of the things that I wanted to get to, and we haven't gotten to yet when talking about these turnovers, is this entire football game felt like a Kansas City Chiefs win, didn't it? Like, because the Chiefs, they always turn it on in January, but over the last couple of years, they've won a lot of ugly games in September, October, November. And this kind of had a feel of a way the Kansas City Chiefs have won games the last couple of years.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, and what did McDermott say after beating Miami, right? It was a good trait that this team has won now in many different ways. And that's one thing I really like about the way this Bills team has stacked these 8 wins this year, is they have won in different fashions, right? They've won with big defensive contributions. They've won with good games on offense. They won running the ball. They run passing the ball. Like, this was like a very much like okay, both teams made some mistakes, but the Bills capitalized more on the other team's mistakes. And that's kind of what you've seen from the Chiefs this year, is capitalizing on other teams' mistakes and finding ways to win at the ends of games, because they only needed to get a couple magical plays, let's say, from Mahomes, and the defense did the rest. And that kind of did feel a little bit like this game, where the defense kind of did a lot of the heavy lifting. And yeah, you're right. It's nice to win games in different ways, because then as you get to the postseason, as you get to different opponents, you feel like no matter what situation you find yourself in a football game, you feel good that you can come out on top. And that's really kind of been the MO for the Chiefs, right? They've won shootouts, they've won low scoring games. So it's nice for the Bills to kind of be in that sort of company as well.
We've already kind of touched on this as well. The second half run defense, Jonathan Taylor went 16 for 107 in the first half. He went 5 for 7 yards in the second half, 0 yards in the fourth quarter. Another interesting stat that stuck out to me, the Colts were 4 for 11 on third down. So the third down defense was pretty good for the Buffalo Bills in this game as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we talked about in multiple pre-games now in a row, right? Is the Bills' third down defense was really bottom 10, just outside the bottom 10 coming into this game, and they tightened it up 4 for 11 for the Colts on third down. The Bills themselves better on offense as well on third down, so that made a difference. But yes, on third down, the Bills really stepped up. It also, I think, helped a little bit too, as you saw and continued improved play from Von Miller, and you also were playing a quarterback in Joe Flacco that really doesn't have any mobility either. So it was nice for the Bills to kind of go up against a quarterback like that after not necessarily playing against super mobile guys, but they've played the likes of Kyler Murray. They've played, other mobile quarterbacks this year. And so it was nice finally to kind of to go up against a guy who really doesn't move well in the pocket. So good job on the third down defense, an area where the fans, and rightfully so, have been frustrated with this team at times this year.
One player I want to highlight is one of the guys who was the talk of this game, and that's Taron Johnson. Johnson with a pick six. He almost had another interception that probably could have gone for 6 if he could have kept it in his arms. He had a sack. He had a tackle for a loss. He had a quarterback hit. He had 2 pass deflections. I'll tell you what, a couple of weeks ago was National Tight Ends Day, and all the tight ends were popping off. This could have been National Nickel Cornerback Day, because you had Taron Johnson in this game versus Kenny Moore, who had a pretty good game in his own right. And then I remember watching Sunday Night Football last night and watching guys like Jalen Petrie and Brian Branch, who play that pseudo safety nickel role. They were having themselves a game as well. So just the nickel cornerbacks were popping off last night, and Taron Johnson, was one of them with a huge game.
Absolutely huge for him to have come back from, being banged up a couple weeks ago, playing at an elite level, making the case for another all-pro season potentially for him. And it was a cool battle. Him and Kenny Moore both had good games. You saw the interaction between McDermott and Kenny Moore at the end of the game as well, respecting that player. Taron Johnson did it all in this game. The pick six to set the tone, the sack you mentioned, and what an asset to have, especially in a scenario where if you're the Bills and you're looking ahead at some of these games, you're going to be looking at Kansas City Chiefs, DeAndre Hopkins playing out of the slot a bunch. You're going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown coming up here in a couple of weeks, playing out of the slot a ton. You are going to need to have that position as an advantage to the other AFC teams when you head into the playoffs, because the AFC playoff picture is tight. All of these teams are good, and Taron Johnson can be, and absolutely is, a difference maker at that slot corner position that can be really an advantage for the Bills that maybe some other teams don't have that level of play, at least that are going to be in the playoffs. So hats off to him. Have all the good corners the Bills have had on this team, probably still gets overlooked at times. And maybe as we go back and look at the history of when all is said and done with the McDermott era, we'll look at him as maybe the best or top 3 defensive player that this team has had in the McDermott era.
Yeah, a little bit of a tangent here, but you mentioned Kenny Moore and Sean McDermott in their post-game interaction, how much respect Sean McDermott had for Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore popped off on his team in the locker room after the game. I don't know if you saw Kenny Moore's comments, but he was talking about how the players were not prepared. They're not preparing the right way. They're not practicing hard enough, all of these things. So, we here on the show are as critical of Sean McDermott as anyone, but when you put things into perspective of the National Football League, I bet Kenny Moore wishes Sean McDermott was his head coach and not the offensive guru in Shane Steichen, because there is more to coaching than just being able to call offensive plays. So we kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit, wanting the Ben Johnsons of the world, or wanting maybe even the Shane Steichens of the world, somebody with an offensive background to be the head coach of this football team. But at the end of the day, NFL players like Kenny Moore probably thinking to themselves, man, Buffalo's got a pretty good one there in Sean McDermott.
Yeah, I mean, it just, again, probably comes down to the player and sometimes the position too, right? It's like, yeah, defensive player may want to lean towards maybe having a defensive minded head coach. So it is nice to see that. And look, I think that Sean McDermott's been under fire at times this year, which has been warranted at times, unwarranted at other times. At the end of the day, this team's 8-2. Do I think that he should be the front runner maybe for coach of the year right now? I absolutely do. But do I think probably a guy like Mike Tomlin is going to have a say in that, given the expectations for the Steelers and given the situation with with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, maybe Dan Quinn in Washington as well. It's one of those awards where, again, you look at it and you say, this team has had sustained success, so it almost kind of takes McDermott out of the running for an award like that. However, the media, big culprit of this, like, really didn't give the Bills a lot of, I would say the expectation for them was to take a step back this year compared to other teams in the division. So I think there is some story there that McDermott could warrant some Coach of the Year consideration. And I think should be right at the top of the list right now, but we'll see anyway. Not to get off on another tangent, but I think it just goes to show, right, what we have in him.
And it's crazy too, because, like, again, we were very critical of Sean McDermott on this show when we feel like we need to be critical of Sean McDermott, but it almost feels like since 2018, right? Like his rookie year, he got a lot of flowers from the national media, but he kind of got overshadowed by Sean McVay and the rise of what Sean McVay has become, and he lost out on that Coach of the Year battle. But it really does feel like since 2018, 2019, Sean McDermott has just become a punching bag for the national media. Like, it is, they love to knock him when the Buffalo Bills do poorly, and they do not like to give him any credit when the Buffalo Bills do well. So if the national media is going by their own narratives they creating, then yeah, I mean, Stefanski's won it twice though, so I could be a little bit off.
It was Stefanski last year, Daboll the year before that. Daboll won in 2022.
Yeah. I was thinking back to 2017 though, when McDermott took the Bills team to the playoff, broke the drought.
Yeah,
I thought it was Sean McVay that year, but it also could have been Kevin.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was
no. Yeah, no. In 2017, it was Sean McVay.
Okay. On to the offense now. Some positive takeaways from the offense. Outside of two very, very bad interceptions that we're not going to excuse, Josh Allen did have a solid day today without what ended up being three of his top four receivers once Dalton Kincaid went down. But once again, it's the out-of-structure plays, his running ability, some of those plays to Mac Hollins that really helped give the offense just enough juice. And one of the things that we're going to talk about when we talk about what we're concerned about is the Buffalo Bills got to be finding better ways to beat cover one than just Josh Allen, go make a play. But I think we got to put Josh Allen's season in perspective, especially seeing the turnover fest that was CJ Stroud and Jared Goff. And from what I'm hearing, Monday Night Football is as well. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not a video game. Josh Allen is not going to score 5 touchdowns every single week and throw only 3 incompletions. That's just not reality. And I see a lot of people saying, well, Josh Allen's having a down season or this or that, or he's just not what he used to be. Or it's like, I'm going to be critical of Josh Allen because he's not doing well. He's been one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the Lamar Jackson is up here and this season. And I'll give Lamar his flowers. He's played incredible. And then maybe it's Joe Burrow, who's also playing incredible despite the fact that his team can't win a football game. But then you can make the argument, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, those guys are all in the running for 3rd, 4th best quarterback in the National Football League this year. And it's impressive what Josh Allen is doing, considering the injuries to his weapons and the newness of his weapons compared to some of those other guys. He's having an incredible year. Just because he might not go for 40 touchdowns for the 5th season in a row doesn't mean that he's some schlub this year who's all of a sudden just a middle-of-the-pack quarterback. He's still, in the year 2024, top 5.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Burrow, Lamar. I think Jaden Daniels probably throw his name into the ring.
Yeah.
But again, right, like, he's up there. He's easily top 5. He's going through a transitional year with his weapons. We're going through an in-season transition as well, and getting a guy like Amari Cooper who's still trying to kind of get through and fight through an injury, and at the same time has played a little bit. And now the Bills have injuries to Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid. So, like, he's done all this through what would have and has been deemed a transition year for this skill position group, right? And these 2 picks, yes, in this game were definitely on him. Like, you could definitely make the case that the 2 before this and prior were not, but he still has not been the quote turnover machine that we've seen as the media has kind of dubbed him over the past several years. And he's kind of been the reputation that's preceded him, even though he's had all those multiple 40 touchdown seasons. So He might not get that 40 combined touchdowns this year, but that sort of ratio for touchdowns to turnovers may be the best that he
Mhm.
and again, there's still games to play, so this could all change, but as of right now, the best ratio that he's had in a season as far as touchdowns to turnovers. So, um, and doing this in a transition year with weapons where the number one option
Mhm.
right now is Khalil Shakir. Number one receiver on his team is Khalil Shakir. I'm not taking anything away from that, but he doesn't have um, guys that some of these others are working with, like Jamar Chase for Joe
Mhm.
Burrow. And I mean, I would even put Zay Flowers as kind of getting into that sort of elite category now with the Baltimore Ravens. So, yeah, I think that he's done a fantastic job.
A solid, not spectacular day on the ground against what is a stout Indy interior. I mean, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, those guys lived up to the hype that we talked about them on the pregame show. EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin, they were running all over the field. They did a great job as well. Kenny Moore, just like the middle of the spine of that defense, super, super solid. And the Buffalo Bills struggled with it a bit. James Cook, 4.2 yards per carry on the ground. You had Josh Allen to supplement a little bit, running for 50 yards, 6.3 yards per carry, but not what we're used to seeing from the Buffalo Bills on the ground in this game. And you combine that with not having 2.5 of your top targets because you lost Dalton Kincaid early-ish on in this football game. And that's a recipe for the struggles that you saw from the Buffalo Bills and the out-of-structure plays that Josh Allen had to make.
Yeah, and I mean, look, James Cook got it going a bit, had a long 20, couple of
Mhm.
those runs he made on his own, right? The one in the first half where he was pretty much stuffed and then turned it into like an 18-yard run. So the Bills did a good job, I thought, running the ball, 4.4 yards a carry against what was the strength of this Colts defense, which was their run defense, especially in the middle with Buckner and Grover Stewart. Some of the off-script stuff from Josh Allen worked well. Uh, Again, second time this year, this team has had over 400 yards of offense. The other time being against the Seattle Seahawks. So in recent weeks, this offense now putting up multiple 400-yard efforts. In a game where, yes, coming in, we thought the Bills could exploit the Colts passing defense,
Mhm.
rated pretty poorly in DVOA. Not a ton of turnovers from the defense, that Colts defense this season. As far as turnover differential, they were middle of the pack. So again, not necessarily the most hostile environment there in Lucas Oil, because it certainly sounded like there were tons of Bills fans there. But for the Bills to put up 400 yards of offense on a day where they did kind of get out of the gate slightly slow, and in a day where they turned the ball over twice plus the turnover and downs, I'll still take that 400 yards of offense. And when the plays needed to be made, Josh Allen made the plays. And again, this is one of those, if you look at the box score and see like, oh, he threw 2 interceptions, didn't pass for any TDs, you really don't appreciate some of the big plays he
Mhm.
made at moments when he needed to. Kind of highlighted really by that Matt Collins play right before the half, off script down the sideline there.
In the passing game, you had some nice days from Khalil Shakir, Matt Collins, Dawson Knox, and Curtis Samuel. Shakir, our guy Merck said on Twitter, extend that man, right? He has become Josh Allen's safety blanket. You throw those little screens to him, and he just immediately becomes a running back. And his yards after the catch, probably still not leading the National Football League after what Jamar Chase did on Thursday night, but definitely in the top 2 or 3 in yards after the catch in the entire National Football League. And he missed a game. So that's pretty impressive for Khalil Shakir. Matt Collins, what a great addition he has been to this football team. Again, it's not if you're a Bills fan, you say something like, I don't like Matt Collins. You like Matt Collins. You don't like the volume of targets the Buffalo Bills were giving Matt Collins early in the season, and that was not Matt Collins' fault. Matt Collins is a perfect 4th or 5th receiver on an NFL football team. He's a great glue guy in the locker room. He's awesome on special teams. And you saw it this week when there are injuries. Every once in a blue moon, he's a guy you can count on as a receiver in the National Football League. He's kind of like a souped up version of what we used to have in a guy like Jake Kumaro when Kumaro was behind Gabriel Davis. So put some respect on Matt Collins' name a little bit this week. And then Dawson Knox continues to make big, timely catches. The volume certainly doesn't match the contract, but it's still nice to see. and Curtis Samuel showing some signs of life and a possibility of maybe some things to come with a couple of nice snags in this football game.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we talked about going into this game, or at least like we talked about this briefly. Mac Hollins had 9 receptions on 9 targets going into this game, adds that now 4 more receptions on 4 more targets. So 13 for 13 as far as targets and receptions for Mac Hollins over the last 3 games. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's over 200 receiving yards combined in the last 3 games, including some big catches on key plays, whether it's third downs or setting up that game-winning kick for the Bills last week, the big play down the sideline this week. I think we said it too, like, right, going into training camp, was that like he's a guy you don't want to have as your like number 1 or number 2, but as a number 4, a guy that has some chops as a receiver and can play good special teams. Like, he's the perfect sort of number 4 guy. And when called upon in situations where maybe other guys are injured, he's not going to be like I guess, like, I don't want to insult Jake Kumaro or Trent Sherfield, but he's better than those guys as a receiver, as a receiver when called upon. So he is a good player, deserves his credit over the last couple weeks, especially.
And he's getting Josh Allen to play chess. Can you imagine if Josh Allen becomes some kind of chess master, the maneuvers that he can carry over from chess onto the football field? Like, that'll be some 4D stuff right there. If Mac Hollins can turn him into some kind of like maestro and being 3 steps ahead on the football field, like you have to be playing the game of chess. That was a little interesting tidbit from the broadcast this week.
Yeah, I heard that, and he was like, he was talking about how like Mac Hollins always beats him, I think, in chess.
He takes a class once a week.
Takes a class, right? And that's what they said. They were like, yeah, he's taking a class on how to play chess, but Mac Hollins just an interesting dude overall. But it's nice that like his story is beyond that, because I think sometimes as Bills fans, we tend to latch on to some of those off the field stuff a little too much compared to the contributions on the field. But it's nice to see the contributions on the field now kind of catching up with some of the off field stories about him.
It was nice to see Spencer Brown defending Josh Allen now. I am not as mad as some other people were on social media at Nick Cross for what they deemed a late hit on Josh Allen on his touchdown run. The field view shows it wasn't him carrying him out of bounds. It wasn't really a shove. It was just 2 guys running at full speed who just happened to be touching each other, and then a cameraman got in the way. But the optics in real time were not great. It did look like Nick Cross sort of carried Josh Allen out of bounds, threw him to the ground, and Spencer Brown rightfully stepped up and handled his business. And that's what you want to see. That's the kind of edge you want to see from your offensive lineman. That's the way you want to see your football team defending their star quarterback. I don't think a flag should have been thrown on that play. I thought both teams were playing by a different set of rules in this game. At one point, one of the Colts defensive linemen, whose name I can't pronounce and I'm not even going to try, was just straight up peanut punching Josh Allen about 3 times in the face on one of his 4th down sneaks. It was pretty crazy, the different set of rules the players had to play by in this game. But kudos to Spencer Brown for stepping up. That's the edge you want to see from your team defending QB1.
Yeah, and speaking of Spencer Brown, I might have missed this, but I know he went out. Did he?
Yes.
He didn't come back in, right? Or did he?
He came back in. But Sean McDermott did say today he's day-to-day, and they'll watch him and monitor him as the week progresses. So we could have a Ryan Vandemark start this week, and I don't think we have another tackle on the 53. Let me check our practice squad to see if we even have a tackle on the practice squad, because Tillon Grable still on IR. Maybe we see a Tillon Grable activation of the 53 to the 53-man roster this week. Who knows? That may be something that pops up over the course of this week.
Yeah, and I don't mind Spencer Brown going over there, because I don't know that he got a really good look at what happened. I think he was just reacting. But I think I 100% agree with you on the replay. It certainly didn't look like it was malicious. There was nothing malicious about sort of how those guys went down. I think it looked worse in real time, especially from the angle you had on the broadcast where they were kind of coming in like into the near into the crowd view, and you couldn't really see from where the broadcast camera angle is what really happened. And I agree with Pops. Vandermark played well when Brown was out. He made a nice play on that
downfield, yeah.
Shakir catch. He was
Mhm.
downfield, and I like Ryan Vandermark anyway. So
Just
you
doing
hope
a quick refresh of the Buffalo Bills roster. The Buffalo Bills, if they don't recall Tillon Grable from IR and put him on the active roster, Alec Anderson is obviously an option to back up Ryan Vandermark at right tackle, but they also could elevate Richard Garage from the practice squad if they needed to next week.
There you go. So some options, not maybe the best, but hopefully Spencer Brown's okay. And then this day-to-day thing is more just McDermott being a little bit cautious.
Speaking of Alec Anderson, maybe he's our dog of the week because he was at the bottom of that pile doing the work necessary to keep the ball in possession of the Buffalo Bills on that Codrington fumble. Big recovery there from Alec Anderson, so kudos to him.
That was, I mean, just listening to kind of what they were talking about, and like Greg and I talking about it yesterday on the like that might have one of like the dirtiest, not dirtiest, and like anyone was like playing dirty, but like that's one dog pile I wouldn't have wanted to be on the bottom of.
If you had to pick one player on the Buffalo Bills to be at the bottom of that pile, I think you're picking Alec Anderson.
Oh, you're picking
based on some of the things that we've seen this year. Him or Spencer Brown are the two guys you want at the bottom of that pile if you're the Buffalo Bills. And while we're on the focus of special teams here, how about Tyler Bass making all of his kicks, all his extra points this week? He looked like he's a pretty confident guy kicking the football right now. Hopefully that continues over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Indoors obviously helped, but he continued that momentum, and it wasn't like his kicks were true, right? I mean, these were solid kicks. None of these sort of like, oh, it went off the upright and in, or like they were all quite true, clean operation. So yeah, Tyler Bass on the upswing, and good for him. Kind of, I said on the post game, maybe that 61-yarder, that was the switch he needed, maybe. And I'm not saying that he's going to now make like 100% of his kicks. I'm not saying that, but I do think that there is a confidence in him now that he needed, and he is playing really, really well right now, and his kicks are looking good.
On to some of our not so nice takeaways, our stock down, our negative takeaways from this football game. Let's just continue on with the offense here. And I posted this on social media this week. There's only so much mad I can get at this offense for some of the issues that we saw this week, just because they were down Amari Cooper, down in Keon Coleman, they lost Dalton Kincaid, etc. And the Colts played the Buffalo Bills vastly different than the way Miami Dolphins played the Buffalo Bills. The Miami Dolphins were two deep shell the entire game. The Indianapolis Colts were cover one. So you look at Josh Allen's passing chart, and it's night and day different than it was last week. Because if your comments here are like, well, if all of your receivers are hurt, we should have just kept dumping the ball off like we did last week and playing underneath. The Colts weren't having that this week. What the Colts did was they brought that safety down, and they forced the Buffalo Bills to work the ball down the field. And you have a pec injury, turf-toed Curtis Samuel, you have Mac Hollins, you have, all these practice squad receivers. So the Buffalo Bills were at a disadvantage, and then Dalton Kincaid goes down. I think that plays a role in the turnovers, but Josh Allen still found a way to make those plays out of structure. But Josh Allen's turnovers are still inexcusable, right? That's a negative. The inability to have an answer in structure for those cover one looks continues to be an issue, right? But again, both of those things, maybe you can absolve the Buffalo Bills a little bit of for 1 week because of those injuries.
Yeah, and I think kind of continuing on that theme, like the injury to Kincaid, like not Josh Allen's best throw. I think if he throws that a bit more on the line, then it's not a problem there. And you hate that throw kind of caused the Dalton Kincaid injury. So that kind of is, I think, the culmination of a little bit of what we're talking about here is that the course of the season, too, they've had some near misses. I think Nate Geary's been pretty vocal about this, and others, that they are this close to having multiple blow-up games for Dalton Kincaid, and they just haven't quite got it. And it was really unfortunate to see on one of those that he ends up getting injured. So I guess the stock down for me, right, on that front, right, is the injuries. Kincaid, we'll see about Spencer Brown. And it's going to be interesting now because the Bills, in the early parts of the season, the injuries were kind of focused on the defensive side of the ball. And now you're starting to see a little bit the injuries piling up on the offensive side of the ball, notably at the skill positions and receiving course. So not ideal, but yeah, let's see how this week looks for Amari Cooper and Dalton Kincaid.
Deion Dawkins and the false starts are kind of getting annoying. The last couple of weeks, he's had a few of those. I think that's a negative takeaway. I find myself wanting the Buffalo Bills to get Ray Davis more involved, but I also understand why they can't. I think there was a really interesting stat today. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit have each had an equal amount of carries and passing game targets this year at 128. And they played one less game than the Buffalo Bills because they've had their bye week already. If you combine all the Bills running back touches and targets, they equal the same amount as the Detroit Lions, 256. So we're a game behind in the number of carries and targets we give to a running back, even though we've played one more game. When Josh Allen's your quarterback, it's a little harder to have two running backs that you can rely heavily on. I feel like Ray Davis maybe deserves more, but it's just more difficult to get him more involved at this time, especially when James Cook is cooking the way that he is. And I also feel like when he gets healthy, and I was hoping it would be this week because I thought it was the perfect time for it, tight ends take time. If you put this into historical perspective and even just league perspective, Dalton Kincaid's been fine. But I just still would just like to see something a little bit more special, a little bit more of a special connection develop between him and Josh Allen. That's kind of what you're looking for with Dalton Kincaid. You're not just looking for like, well, metrically he's fine. You're looking for something special. And I really hope once he gets healthy, him and Josh Allen can find that, because it doesn't seem too organic right now between those two.
No, I think there was a lot of expectation on him coming into this season, and I think rightfully so, right? Stephon Diggs leaves town.
100%.
Dalton Kincaid, second in the team in targets last year, phenomenal rookie season. Maybe a lot of pressure on him this year to deliver as well, but also I think like just stylistically with the offense, like they just have missed a couple. He's 3 or 4 probably plays away from having a significantly higher yardage total, maybe a couple more touchdowns. And so, yeah, I think they're just not quite there. And you see like the history a bit with Josh Allen and Dawson Knox on that play, beautiful throw, probably his best throw of the game that he made to Knox. They have the history, and, Josh Allen has that history with Dawson Knox. And yes, he had the phenomenal rookie season, Kincaid, that is. And I think there just needs to be something that kind of gets him going a bit. But number one priority right now is like he's got to get healthy, and then when he comes back, like you said, like maybe there can be a little bit more of an upswing. But I will say this too, right? If you look around the league, tight end's been kind of a dumpster fire for a lot of teams this year. Like even a guy like Sam Laporta, who was the conversation of Sam Laporta versus Dalton Kincaid last year. Like Sam Laporta himself is not having the season he had as a rookie either. Probably even less so. Less impactful season than Dalton Kincaid's having, and we don't even think Dalton Kincaid's having a huge year. So look around the league too, just to have a little bit of perspective on the Dalton Kincaid situation, because there are other situations like Laporta, who had a phenomenal rookie year as well, and just tight end across the league is kind of a dumpster fire right now.
Onto the defense now. Run stopping early in the game, like that's concerning. I know, Eric has done such a great job over in the film room and on social media of pointing out, like, this is what the Bills do. Like, you can't excuse DeMar Hamlin's angle. It was bad. It was one play in the totality of the game, and he had a pretty solid game, outside of that one play. But the Bills challenge teams to show their hand early, and then they adjust. I think Greg Tomset made the joke in our Cover One chat. They're like the 85 Bears in the second half right now. Like, they're just destroying people. Once they figure out their hand, they adjust and they're fine. But I don't like Jonathan Taylor going over 100 yards in the first half. Like Devin A-Chain just shredding us up in the first half. We adjust. I get it. But against better teams, like these chunk plays, these early scores, I'm picturing us playing the Rams and Kyren Williams popping off in the first half. I'm picturing us playing the Chiefs in the playoffs and Isaiah Pacheco popping off. I'm picturing us either in the regular season or, gosh forbid, like making it to the Super Bowl and having David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs pop off in the first half, Derrick Henry, and just in a big game, a crucial game, an elimination game, when there is no next game if you lose, a running back popping off in the first half and giving that team just what they needed to inch themselves over you, like, that's concerning, right? Like, there are just some back-breaking, big, explosive runs that are being, that the Buffalo Bills are susceptible to right now, and it's a little concerning.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think that's going away because I think stylistically that's what this team is, right? They're very aggressive, sort of downhill playing team against the run, and that can kind of lead to you being susceptible to big plays. It is a very boom or bust, I would say, type of run defense for the Bills, right? It's a lot of no gain, 1 yard, negative run defense plays, but there's also a lot of big chunk plays that kind of offset that at times when they're not in the right spot. So I do think stylistically that's kind of what they're okay with, because I think, to Eric's film analysis and other, analysis of this defense is that's just kind of what they are. They're going to adjust to what teams do, and they're going to kind of play back and kind of react to how teams are running the ball, and that's how they're gonna play. I did think they did obviously a great job in the second half, but you're right. I mean, a play like that in the playoffs can be a backbreaker. We saw it kind of was a backbreaker against the Baltimore Ravens when the Bills played them earlier in the season. A team like the Lions absolutely scares the crap out of me if it comes to that. And we'll see how the Bills fare here in a couple weeks. But I also don't love the idea of like going up again against Isaiah Pacheco in the playoffs when he's back with the Chiefs. So yeah, it's a concern, but I think that's kind of what this defense is. And then that's why analytically they still look pretty good, because they do allow a lot of negative and short yardage plays as well to kind of offset that.
The big concern that I think a lot of people are sort of ringing the alarm bells about it, and this is a comment that I starred from Ralph Wilson Sr. earlier. He said, big thing is with the statue at quarterback and a rookie center, Ed Oliver still couldn't get a sniff. And Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones were invisible in this game, and they have been, quite frankly, invisible all season. And the Buffalo Bills' inability to create any pressure from the interior is concerning. I mean, every year we talk about just how good freaking Chris Jones is, and we sit here and we salivate over Quinnen Williams and Jeffrey Simmons and Dexter Lawrence. And Ed Oliver is not any of those dudes, but as a 3-tech, at least he had been making plays here and there and would go on regular season streaks at least and have big regular seasons, and you could sort of rely on that. But just no interior pressure. They desperation signed Jordan Phillips because of it. Like, the Bills are doing anything they can to try to create some kind of interior pressure, and it's just not happening for them right now.
It's a tough situation if you're the Bills, because I think that at times in watching these games back, Ed Oliver has been able to get penetration. It's not really translating though into the box score, meaning like he's not really getting to the quarterback. He's not knocking balls down. It's a catch-22 if you're the Bills, because of how good Terrell Bernard is in coverage at that linebacker spot. You also know how good he is at blitzing, but the Bills don't really like to send Terrell Bernard as much as maybe he is very good at it to manufacture that pressure up the middle. They don't do that a lot right now with Terrell Bernard because of how good he is in coverage, and they're still hoping that guys like Oliver can get home in the interior. But that's the kind of thing that when you go up against and play a team like the Chiefs this week, or in a couple weeks you play a Brock Purdy, that interior pressure, it's gonna have to step up. And look, analytically, it's not just about like, oh, they're not getting in the box score either, right? Analytically, from a pass rush for interior defensive linemen efficiency standpoint, the Bills are very poor, right? They have one player in the top 50 out of, I think Pro Ant said there was like 108 qualifying players, and they have one guy in the top 50 in pass rush efficiency from an interior D-line perspective. So it's not happening. I thought there were good reps from Oliver against the Dolphins a week ago. I thought there were a couple good reps in this game, but it's not translating all the way yet as it had been in prior years.
You mentioned Tyrel Bernard too, and I just want to give him his flowers. We forgot to mention him earlier when we were talking about the defense. He had a really good game. It's fun to have him back. And there was that one play that stood out. I didn't get a chance to get all the way through your guys' post-game show yesterday. I'm not sure if he talked about it, but there was that mesh play that they ran on 4th down on the Quentin Jefferson sack, and Tyrel Bernard saw it coming from a mile away. He communicated with Cam Lewis. Cam Lewis took the one crosser. He wiped out and took away his crosser. Joe Flacco had nowhere to throw it. Quentin Jefferson gets the coverage sack. Couldn't have defended that mesh concept any more perfectly if you were the Buffalo Bills, and Joe Flacco gets sacked and the Buffalo Bills get the ball back on downs, and it was really one of the plays that really put this football game away. So Tyrel Bernard with a big game, and for the Colts, a big game for Adonai Mitchell, and it was a little painful to see Adonai Mitchell have a good game. We didn't have our rookie there to sort of counteract and combat that on our end in Keon Coleman. So kudos to Adonai Mitchell, had a good game as well for the Colts.
Yeah, and on the Tyrel Bernard front, I mean, almost had the interception as well on that drive early in the game for the Colts where Josh Downs dropped that walk-in touchdown on the next play. On the 3rd down play, almost jumped the route against Josh Downs and made the interception. So Tyrel Bernard, again, I mentioned it last week, the quote dynamic duo of him and Taron Johnson, to me, them being back and being healthy now for a couple weeks, further removed from their injuries, they're 100% healthy now, or 100% as you can be in week 10 of the NFL season. Those guys are so critical for the success of the Bills down the stretch and into the playoffs. So big shout out to TB.
Thumbs down to Jordan Phillips. And I guess I can't even be mad at him. Like, the game was clearly out of hand. The game was clearly over, but Jordan Phillips had a chance to run down Joe Flacco and chose to just not. And he kind of just stood there. But think back to, what was that shoulder injury he had on Mac Jones a couple of years ago on Thursday Night Football? That was probably going through Jordan Phillips' head as he was chasing down Joe Flacco. He's like, no, I want none of that smoke. I want to stay healthy. I want to stay on the field. And Claude Puig comes in and says Quentin Jefferson didn't look bad. He had a pretty good game filling into that Dwayne Smoot role. So it's nice to have Quentin Jefferson in tow with Dwayne Smoot on injured reserve. All right, that should just about do it for us this evening. Post-game, Sean McDermott said Bills Mafia was outstanding again, taking over Lucas Oil Field, really making a difference there on the road. The CBS pregame show is coming to Buffalo for a big game against Kansas City. They're going to be there in person. So I owe Nate Burleson some chicken wings because I made an ass of myself on the internet. So if anyone wants to spot me and get Nate some bar bill while we're there, I would really appreciate that. And it's going to have that college game day atmosphere there in Orchard Park. Somebody said on the internet this morning, and I apologize for not being able to give you credit, but they were like, CBS pregame show is going to give it that college game day feel. 4 p.m. kickoff means 3 extra hours of drinking. It's going to be absolutely apocalyptic inside of Ralph Wilson Stadium on Sunday. That crowd is going to be electric.
It's going to be awesome. I'm glad they're going. It is definitely going to feel like a college game atmosphere. And the nice thing about this too is, like, I don't want to underplay like how significant the game is, because from a regular season standpoint, this is as big of a matchup as the NFL could hope for, right? The 8-2 Bills, 9-0 Chiefs. But at the end of the day, I am obviously easier said than done. I'm going to try not to get too high or too low depending on the outcome of this game, because as it's been against the Kansas City Chiefs, what's mattered against this team is how the Bills have performed in the playoffs. They've had the Chiefs number in the regular season. In the playoffs, they haven't been able to get it done. So while it's great and you can prove again that you could beat this team, maybe it is a good way to prove that you can beat a different version of this Chiefs team who has a really good defense, struggling a bit on offense. I'm kind of at peace with whatever happens in this game, at least for right now. At least for right now.
And at the end of the day, at least it'll be fun, right? At least it'll be fun. Bills Mafia will have some fun this week. We'll have some fun this Sunday. That fun might come to an abrupt and angrily end by like 7 or 8 p.m., but it'll be fun while it lasts. Bills fans know from the drought era, it's always fun until 1 p.m. It's always fun until 1 p.m. So thank you guys so much. As always, we try our best to get your comments put into this show. You guys drive a lot of the conversation, a lot of what we talk about. Always appreciate you guys killing it in the comment section as always. If you want to help us out, there's a number of things you can do. You can smash that like button, helps us with the algorithm. You can click that little share button and you can share this show on any of your social media platforms, or text it to a friend, whoever you think would enjoy this Air Raid Hour post-game show. Bunch of great content coming up for you this week. You got Under Review tomorrow night. You got Disguise coverage tomorrow night. You got Film Room features dropping all week. You got Cover One Buffalo with Greg and Aaron on Wednesday. Like, we have you covered here at Cover One, and we will have our pregame show, as always, Sunday at 8 a.m. Dave, any final thoughts before we head out of here?
No, I mean, going to prep for this week, do my bit and make sure that we are fully prepared for that 8 a.m. pregame, but lots of good content coming out this week. Discord channel for the Cover One Pass members has been really pretty on fire the last couple days, so get in there.
I'm figuring out how to use Discord. I screwed up yesterday. I meant to search a topic and I accidentally just sent the name of the topic into the chat, so that was fun, but it was my old man moment for the day. But I'm getting better at it. I'm in there as well, talking with all the Cover One Pass members. So head on over there and get into the Discord. Always fun conversation. Well, thank you guys so much. We went a little later today. Lots to talk about. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!